Previously, I made a video about how I would continue the Indiana Jones franchise. I made the comment that I would uncanon the last two films if I could, and this mostly has to do with the character aging into a miserable person. I stand by my previous statement that Indiana Jones should not have movies that take place after the Second World War. However, I would allow a condition where we could have an older character. I would also fix his relationship with Marion and his son Mutt. I want to be clear. The purpose of this rework is to maximize the earning potential of the franchise, and this means having a happy ending. Very briefly, I want to repeat that Indy should not have adventures after the Second World War. He's too old, and his world is gone by the war's end. I go into more detail in my other video. Give it a watch, the link is below. Keeping Harrison Ford is the reason we got movies with old Indy in the 1950s and 60s. I admit that recasting Ford in 2008 was definitely not on the table. But casting Mr. Ford in 2023 is just spineless lunacy. This is a symptom of bad leadership at Disney. The short of it is this. Disney wanted Lucasfilm to cast Ford as Indy so they could have star power attached to the project to appease the shareholders. It's actually the same reason they cast Ford in 2008, only this time it was higher risk and they lost. The $380 million Dial of Destiny did not make its money back. I said in my other video that I would cast Alden Ehrenreich as Ford's replacement and not move beyond the war, but let's imagine that Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny happened anyway, but were written properly. What would that look like? Let's start with Crystal Skull. The story brings back Marion Ravenwood. That's fine, everyone loves Marion. Marion and Indy are not married, but separated. Indy is a rash character who gets into trouble, so having a rocky relationship is on brand. The problem is they have a child together and Indy doesn't know. This story decision is the fork in the road that led to two bad movies. Indy must know his son. All the other story elements can stay. We can keep Cate Blanchett and her Soviet thugs, the skull, the aliens, the British guy. Maybe not the atomic refrigerator though. Keep the atomic test, but write it so Indy would have to outrun the blast on that rocket sled. How awesome would that have been? Let's go. In the end, these are just gags to frame what the story is actually about. This is why Indy needs to have an established relationship with his son before the story begins. We are way too far into the story before Indy finds out that Mutt is his son. Worse still, Mutt doesn't know either. This is a terrible story decision, because they are both thrust into a father-son relationship that comes off as awkward rather than dramatic. Indy immediately starts to fill that role by criticizing Mutt for not staying in school, something his own father might have done. The problem is that Indy did not earn the right to be Mutt's father. He had zero influence on Mutt's upbringing and character development, and most importantly, the two don't have a relationship at all. This means the audience has nothing invested in that relationship, and that means there are no stakes for that relationship. So how do we fix this? It's easy. Indy knows he has a son from the beginning. This means Indy must transition to a father character. We'll come back to that. The other huge missed opportunity is this. If Indy doesn't know that Mutt is his son, then Henry Jones Sr. is robbed of having a grandson. Henry could have stepped up and filled the role of Mutt's grandfather even if Mutt and Marion weren't married. This would also work since Mutt's other grandfather, Abner, was already dead before the events of Raiders. Imagine what it would be like for Mutt to grow up with Henry Jones as his grandfather. The stories and lessons learned from Henry's life would be instrumental in developing the character that Mutt would become. And wouldn't Henry's influence on Mutt just infuriate Indy? That is where the conflict between Indy and Mutt should come from. It's a continuation of the headbutting with his own father. Henry could have been there for Mutt and Marion while Indy was doing his wartime duties. Henry could also focus his energies on Mutt to make up for the mistakes he made with Indy. Indy could have been more present during the immediate post-war years while he still had friction with Marion. From Indy's point of view, the dynamics before the events of Crystal Skull would be Henry, Mutt, and Marion versus him. Indy would be dealing with his inability to compromise with Marion, butting heads with Mutt, and eventually losing his father. This is where Crystal Skull should have begun. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull should have been about the reconciliation of Indy to his son. It should also have been about Indy repairing his relationship with Marion. admitting that he really loves her, and finally committing to her. Ideally, this would all be done through interactions with Mutt. We still get the same ending in the chapel where Indy and Marion tie the knot, but this time it means something to the audience. Let's talk about Marion. Marion keeping who the father is changes the course of the story. It's also a strike against her character. I think this was a dumb, short-sighted decision and it should not have been made. I would have her tell Indy early and before the start of the Second World War. Indy needs to know he has a son back home so he can make the changes to be a part of Mutt's life when the war is over. Henry needs to know so that he can fill the role of Mutt's grandfather early so he can have an influence on Mutt's life. But all of that hinges on Marion's decision to tell. As for Mutt, his course would be completely changed. Instead of being a rebel dropout Brando wannabe, he would be a capable college student with Henry's academic influence paired with Marion's street smarts. This would make him a lot like Indy and provide opportunity for conflict. In fact, this would make the two ideal for an adventuring team. Indy, who is stuck in the past using classic archaeology methods, has to navigate the world that has changed because of the war. Mutt, on the other hand, has embraced new techniques and technology to do archaeology, something Indy finds less value in. In the end, they both rely on each other's strengths and experiences to accomplish their goals and at last repair their relationship. It's that easy. Crystal Skull ends with Mutt and Indy reconciled, and Indy and Marion married. Our heroes emerge victorious, having conquered their flaws and at last united as a family. Oh yeah, they also stopped the Soviets from getting their hands on unspeakable cosmic power. Now for the other one. Dial of Destiny has so many wrong choices it'll be difficult to unpack them all. Many of the problems come from choices of the previous movie, namely Indy's relationship with Mutt and Marion. Marion telling Indy about his son would have completely altered the events of Dial. It's very unlikely Mutt would have volunteered for Vietnam, Indy and Marion would likely still be together, and Indy would probably be retired instead of being a miserable, underpaid professor. The way I see it, we have two options on how to fix Dial of Destiny. The first is to go with the Dial as the MacGuffin, and follow those plot points as before. Actually, let's not do that. The plot of Dial of Destiny is dumb, convoluted, and takes too long to set up. In fact, the movie should never have happened. However, let's assume we're all hell-bent on making a fifth movie with Harrison as Indy. Fine. We'll include Mutt, who is not dead, ditch the Dial plot, and focus on a story where Indy has to come out of retirement to help his son. I offer this as a fifth movie plot. Mutt is a young archaeologist in the mid-1960s, teaches at a university and uses modern techniques for his work, the sort of thing Indy scoffs at. He gets in over his head and must ask his father for help. Mutt is engaged to a girl who is finishing her doctorate but has been kidnapped by Indy's old adversary, Lao She. Lao wants to trade the girl for the remains of a sorcerer warlord. Think Lo Pan. This is on brand for Lao She, who uses family remains as leverage. This is partially a ruse, as Lao She also wants revenge on Indy. The story sends Mutt and Indy to the Far East, but not before stopping off in Hong Kong to pick up an old ally, Short Round. Of course we would bring back Ke Huy Quan. The team would then sneak into mainland China in the middle of the Cultural Revolution and find the hidden tomb of the sorcerer warlord. They would deal with ancient guardians, Chinese black magic, and dodging the CCP and the PLA. Finally, there would be the showdown with Lao She, the PLA, and the ghost of the not Lo Pan sorcerer warlord. Indy, Short Round, Mutt, and his fiancée escape, while Lao She loses the remains and the PLA lose the flesh off their bones. I'd like to see Lao She get away in the end. I feel that he, like Indy, struggles to find a place in the latter half of the 20th century. He lives with the knowledge he was again thwarted by Indy. The point of the fifth film with Harrison as Indy is to pass the torch to his son. As far as movies go, old Indy is done. He served his purpose. If we want younger Indy movies, then recast and set them before the war. I talk all about that in my other video. If Disney wants to keep the franchise alive beyond World War II, then Mutt needs to be the character to focus on. But they shot themselves in the foot by killing him off before the events of Dial. The short-sightedness of Lucasfilm is so frustrating. It's as if they wanted to kill the character and the franchise entirely. This, of course, is a mistake. The best way forward might be to license out the IP to a third party, someone who loves the character and the lore. But for now, Skull and Dial are officially canon, and Indy's future is unclear. If anyone at Disney is watching this video, these are the changes I would have made to save the last 2 films. This is what I would do if I ran Disney.